You know, in the immortal words of Dumb and Dumber. So you're saying there's a chance for DDR3. Welcome back to the channel where we like to hot rod everything. Recently, a lot of people have been hot rodding their DDR4 builds in order to combat rising RAM and storage prices. My dumpster desktop is DDR3. Now, it's still kneecapped by a 3770K and a GTX 960, but when I put 32 gigs of RAM in it, it really made a big difference in gaming performance. So, before I build the computer that ultimately replaces it, I wanted to see if I put a modern graphics card in this bad boy, I can't give it one last shot at glory and see if this is a viable option for riding out the storm. Okay, I'm gridded up at Laguna Seca riding the CBR 600 as always. This computer does not meet the minimum requirements for this game, so we're just going to get a benchmark here and see if we can't do any better. Yeah, 30 frames, 35 frames is really not ideal. But CPU is only really at 40 or 50%, 30%, about 40. RAM is also chilling, but that GPU is absolutely screaming for mercy. So I'm thinking, you know, the math is mathin'. If I put a better GPU in, this might become a much better option. And of course, you can put the GPU, you can put a new GPU in a new build when you're ready to do it. Oh gosh. Bring it on home, baby. Yeah. GPU just absolutely screaming. Okay, so that went pretty much how I thought it was gonna. But I think we'll be able to get a couple more frames out of this bad boy with the new GPU. Now let's play some Call of Duty, for which I do actually meet the minimum system requirements, and then see how it turns out. Gonna be basically the same. Not as bad as that though. All right, we're looking at about 90 frames. All right, doing much better this game. By the hair of my chinny chin chin. Done. Come on, step into my office. Eee, can't fight two of them. Of course, it helps when you get the first guy in one shot. All right, looks like we got about 90 frames, 75 to 80% CPU usage, and then graphics card still just screaming for dear life. So let's put the new graphics card in and see what happens. 10 and 8. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I cut my hair. Okay. Now let's unbox this bad boy, slap it in there, and see what happens. Based on my research, even playing Ride 5, which I don't meet the minimum system requirements for, upside down, the GPU was screaming for dear life, but the CPU was kind of chilling. Like, I don't remember what it was, but it was well under 100% utilization on, what was I playing? Call of Duty, where I do meet the minimum system requirements. It was using more, I think about 70% of the CPU, but it was the same story where the GPU was maxed to the gills. So, with a new GPU. Quick install guide, might take a peek at that. I'm thinking with a modern GPU, even games I don't meet the minimum requirements for should become more playable. I'm not saying I'm going to be getting 120 frames, but if I can get 60 instead of 30, that's double the performance for a 12-year-old computer with DDR3 RAM. So it's worth looking into given the state of things. All right. Ooh, yes. Got a protective cover on it. I do apologize, this is not a very good peel, but this plastic goes several different ways. All right, this one we can wrap around. Yeah, baby. All right. This is obviously the Sapphire card. Sapphire Pulse, 16 gig 9060 XT. Very pretty on the back. All right, let's slap it in. There she is. In all her glory. All right, locked and loaded. Luckily, the correct power cable was, or a little extension was ready to go. Let's fire it up. Already, it looks way better. All right, at Laguna Seca on the Honda 600. It's mostly because I haven't unlocked anything else in this game. Though I do actually ride a CBR 600, so I am partial to it. All right, hasn't started yet, but already we're at 100 frames. And the detail is way better, like the dashboard and the rider's further away. I don't know if it'll show up in camera, but it is just immediate difference. I'll try and get out of traffic before I start looking at numbers. And that's pretty much why. All right, we definitely got some sort of compatibility issue here. All right, third time's a charm here. It crashed twice, and it did actually give me a warning that I had to switch my boot program from CSM to UEFI. I had to Google what that meant, but it's done now, and hopefully it's working. Also, I had to delete all of the Nvidia drivers. I didn't get them all the first time. But it was really the boot device that was holding me back. All right, let's have ourselves a race. All right, last lap. Rocking 110 frames over the start finish. What a beauty. CPU's now at 55, 60%. I think that's a little higher than before, but it's not being kneecapped by the graphics card, so it's able to do more work. Graphics card now at 55, 60% instead of 100, using 6 gigs of 5.8 gigs of VRAM out of 16. So presumably you don't even have to get, yikes brother, a new card from this generation. You could get an 8 gig card and get pretty similar results. Because again, from what I can tell, DDR3 is not the problem. I mean, I went from not meeting the minimum recommended specs for this game to now getting 110 frames. Even with my CPU still being years behind. Alright, this was not my finest work, but I'll take second. Crazy. I mean, that was incredible. That more than tripled the frames I was getting. I was really locked at 30 or 35. So to go from 35 to 110 or 115, I gotta be honest, I'm feeling pretty smart right now. I'm also feeling like DDR3, you know, might not be so bad if you're trying to weather the storm here. You know, this was just the computer I had. The graphics card was specifically for an upgrade, but you know, if you're just working with what you got, which is what this channel is all about, the details in Ride 5 took a huge leap as well. Things like the dashboard where it's got the gears, RPM, and lap time on that specific bike, way, way, way sharper. You could read them before. I don't know if it'll show up in the camera, but they were massively improved. Also, details in the distance. You know, we're moving, so it's kind of hard to get all of that in focus, but the depth to which everything was still crispy was massively improved. All right, let's find a lobby and see what this does. Oh, boys. 180, 190, 195. I can't read numbers and play the game. Gosh, I'm just so impressed with myself right now. Now the CPU's at 95%. Now the CPU, because the GPU isn't holding us back, GPU's only at 40% now, using 4.7 gigs of VRAM, so even less than Ride was, but still more than 4, which was my problem before. Yeah, now the CPU is working, I don't want to say holding us back, but it is pretty maxed out. 10 gigs of RAM. I mean, again, DDR3 is not the problem here, which is what this video was all about. Gosh, I just love to see 220 frames, 230 frames. What was it? It was like 90 before. So this is more than double. Oh! And I escaped the grenade. Nice shooting, Tex. God, sometimes I've just got the accuracy of a stormtrooper. That's what I mean by shooting like a stormtrooper. I got nothing. That was brutal. Oh, am I getting called out in the chat again right now? Oh no! Oh, what a shame. Just absolutely embarrassed myself and my team. But on the plus side, the science experiment worked. I'm getting over 200 frames. CPU is working harder now because the graphics card can basically give it the runway it needs, or yeah, give it the runway it needs to work. Oh, I got one. What a way to enter the chat, dude. The long ball. A little bit lower than the last game. I don't know if this is a more involved map or something like that. Another day of heavily relying on the team. Alright, I'm gonna have to quit there. I can only take so much abuse. Better than last game. I went from 2 and 25 to 4 and 17. We call that progress. In the first game, I was getting over 200 frames. In that one, I was getting about 140-ish. CPU about 75%. GPU still chilling. You do need more than 4 gigs of VRAM, but we pretty much knew that already. But again, DDR3 was not the problem. I don't know about you guys, but I am thoroughly impressed with how this little science experiment turned out. I could see from the numbers that my GPU was the only thing getting maxed out while gaming. So I thought, is DDR3 enough if your GPU has maybe a little extra horsepower? And I think it is. I think it is. It's not what I want. I wouldn't recommend it. I would really not want to try to like edit a video on this computer because the CPU will hold you back there. But for older games, I mean, when did this come out? Ride 5 came out in August of 2023. This game's only 2.5 years old. Minimum requirements for the CPU or recommended requirements are a 10700. An i7 10700. Minimum requirements are an i3 10100. I have an i7 3770K. I'm not even close. I'm literally 7 generations behind. But I still had 32 gigs of RAM, and with a good enough graphics card, it was enough to make up for it. That's pretty cool, guys. That's pretty cool. You know, in the immortal words of Dumb and Dumber. So you're saying there's a chance for DDR3. I'm going to end it off there. Thanks for watching, guys. Like, comment, subscribe, share, ring that bell. And, of course, hot rod everything.